Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do a project on a custom keychain using an arrowhead. So we're going to place that arrowhead on this keychain, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And I just got a little pattern here that I made for it. So we're going to do it in pre-dyed black leather. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so I've got everything laid out here. This is what I started with, just some pre-dyed black leather. This is probably 7 or 8 ounce weight or thickness. I've got a pair of needle nose pliers, small needle nose. Got a pair of small side cut pliers. I've got a key ring that is 1.25 inches. So I've got 1.25 inch key ring. I've got my arrowhead, and this is a synthetic arrowhead. It's not real, but you can pick these up in bulk pretty cheap on the internet to do things like this with. Then I've got my pattern that I made. I've got a single stitching punch, and I'll use a multiple stitching punch too. And then I've got some copper wire. This is 20 gauge copper colored wire for crafting. You pick that up at like Hobby Lobby or any hobby shop. So that's what I'm starting with. I took my pattern, cut out my leather into that simple shape that will actually fold over and stitch after I get my synthetic arrowhead on there. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take just a piece of scrap leather, and I'm going to place my arrowhead on here. Where I want that. And I beveled the edges on the front, and then I also grooved it so I know where I'm going to put my stitches. And I think you can see that, those grooving marks. Those grooves are 3/16 away from the edge. So what I'm going to do now is locate my holes for my copper wire. So I want to put the flattest part of the arrowhead onto my leather. And then I'm going to take my single stitching punch, holding that in place, and I'm going to mark that right at the top. Where that curves down, and you've got a natural little groove right there and right there. So you can see where I put my marks. So I'm going to go ahead and use that single stitching punch. I'm going to put a hole through each side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in there. These punches I have are almost like they're square. They're pointed on the end, but then they're square. I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to turn that, and that'll open that hole a little bit, kind of round that hole out. I'm not trying to make it bigger as much as I'm just trying to open it up and round it a little bit from being square. Then I can go ahead and take a piece of this copper wire and I'm going to cut it off where I've got a nice smooth transition here down the wire, and it's not so kinked up like where I folded it over to hold it. And it's not going to take a lot of this, so I'm just going to cut off about 6 inches. And instead of kinking that over real bad, I'll just put me a little spot in there in the top of the plastic to put my copper wire like that. That way I won't bend over so much and waste it. Alright, so I've got my wire. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place my wire through the front. I'm going to put it through that side. And notice how I'm keeping that around my finger as I bend it, because I don't want to kink that. Then I'll put that through the other hole on the other side. So that's what it'll look like coming out. And then this side is looped. Now I can go ahead, place the flat side of the arrowhead down, and I can start pulling that wire through there. And I want to pull it through to where both sides are as even as possible, both lengths. And then what I'll do, I believe I can either go ahead and attach this on the back, or I can move those over, run them back through the hole. Now, the way I can do that is I've got a stylus here. I could open that hole up just a little bit on the back and stick that wire back through the front again. And all that's going to do is double that up. You can see that coming through there again. Now's when I can take my needle nose and pull on that. Get that nice and snug. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I'll take that stylus, put it right in that hole with the wires coming through. Now, I'm not trying to stick it through there all the way or anything. I'm just giving me a little opening to get that wire in there. Now I can hold down on the actual arrowhead and pull those wires snug. Now, in order to finish this, I want my finished side on the back so that it ends up on the inside. So I'm going to do the same thing from this side. And that's why I did a 6-inch piece of wire. You might have thought at the beginning, it's like, you don't need that much wire for that tiny arrowhead or that tiny keychain, but I need that much wire in order to go around 2 times. Do the same thing on the other side. Again, as I bend that wire, I'm keeping it round. I don't want to kink that. I don't want to get a sharp bend in it. So I'm keeping that round around my finger. And as soon as I can get it through that hole, I can grab it with the needle nose, pull it good and tight. Now, if you look on this side, which is the finished side, get it to focus, I've got 3 strands of copper wire around there. So I can pull those snug. And once I pull them snug, I can cross them. And I'll take a pair of flat needle nose pliers, grab both wires at the same time, and that's where I can start turning and tightening those. And the whole time I'm watching the front to make sure those are staying nice and straight. Now be careful, because you can over tighten this and break the wire. And what that does is that snugs that down to where that arrow's in there really tight, pulls it down into the leather. And then what I'll do is I'll take my side cuts, cut off any excess, take my flat pliers and fold that down. So I'll fold that down toward the copper. Now when I fold this over and stitch it together, you won't see any of that. But then that's what the keychain looks like. So my next step is I got to get my holes in there for my stitching. So I'm just going to use, it's so small, I'm just going to use a 2-hole punch, stitching punch, and a piece of scrap leather. Now, as I go down, I want to be careful. I could have done this beforehand, not to break my arrowhead. So you could punch it beforehand if you'd like. Be just as easy. Probably smarter to punch it beforehand. That way you don't have to worry about damaging the edge of your arrowhead. This leather is just the right thickness for that. Now I'll work my way up the other side. And using a 2-prong punch, I can control that a lot better than using a bigger, like a 4-prong. Alright, so there's my holes around the edge, and they do follow the arrowhead itself. So I'll put my key ring on. I guess I could wait, put that on after. But what I'll do is I'll fold this over. Now I'll go ahead and punch through the other side. And with that scrap piece of leather there, it makes it easy to punch through it. So what I'll do is get my first 2 holes on there, and then I'll go ahead and put my single punch, line those first 2 holes up, put that through my first hole, and what that will do is hold that for me as I go around and punch my next holes. So I already have my holes in the top piece, so I'm not worried about those lining up. I just got to make sure that I keep the side of the keychain front and back lined up. As I transfer those holes through to the back. And then I don't have to worry. I can do 2 holes at once. I don't have to put it in a hole to be lined up. So there's one side. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that hole's still lined up, and then come over to the other side and do the same thing. Again, it'll go a little quicker because I can do 2 holes at once. All I have to do is go through the top holes through the back. Need to put some beeswax on this. Make it come out of there much easier. And what I'm talking about, I've got some beeswax right here, and if you just do that, that's all it takes. That'll go in and out of that leather. You can pull that out of your leather so much easier, and that's all it takes is just a little bit. So let's go ahead and put that back. Take our single punch out that was holding it. Now we can take our key ring, slide it on. I'm going to slide it on through the back, and then we can go ahead and start stitching this. Now this was a part of the arrowhead before I started. That was a blemish that was on there, so I just thought it made it look more natural than being just perfect, especially with it being synthetic, not being real. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to get my stitching box, And I am going to use black synthetic sinew, and I'll wrap that around, and I'll go 4 times that length. The total length or distance of my stitch linearly, that's not easy for me to say. So there's 3 links, and there's 4. What that does is that gives me plenty to make sure that I'm going to have enough sinew to make it all the way around there. Then I've got, there's 1 needle, there's a needle, and as small as this is, I'll probably need my needle nose pliers. So I'll go ahead and thread the first needle, thread it down to pull about 4 inches through, and it's waxed, so I'll just fold that over on my needle and work it down, and that will keep it from wanting to come off of there. So you don't have to split your thread or anything. Go through at the exact same length on the other end, fold it over, and then work that on that eye, and that'll stay right on there. So first thing, before I start, I want to figure out where I want to end this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end it at the top toward the key ring, so that I can hide my stitch inside. So it doesn't really matter which side I start on. I'm going to end on the opposite. So I'll go ahead, put that through that first hole at the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do I'll make my needles match. Then I'll do a double lock stitch. It's probably not really necessary on this, because of the use that it's going to get. It's not going to be a heavy duty like a holster or something like that. Again, make sure that those needles are even after you put it through there once. I'm going to take that front needle, not the back, put it in the second hole. Then I'll pull that through, take the back needle, put it through the second hole. So I've already got a stitch in there. So this is called a saddle stitch. I'm going to use 2 needles, front and back. And because of this being a keychain, that's going to be strong enough to definitely hold that. So I'll go through the next set of holes front to back with that needle. Then I'll go back to front with the second needle through the same hole. For every one of those that I lock in, once I'm done, I'll pull on those, snug them down real nice and tight. And what that'll do is that'll keep that tight from that very first hole. So I'll continue this around, and I'll show you how I'm going to lock that in when I get to the end. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm down to the last stitching hole here. I went all the way around, and then what I'm going to do on this one, a lot of times you can just lock double stitch it here too if you want, but what I'm going to do on this, since it's just a key ring and it's not going to have a lot of wear and tear or pull on it, is I'm going to go through that first hole with the front needle, and then I'm gonna push that needle up between those two pieces of leather and pull that all the way through. I'll take the back needle, put it through the back hole only, and put it up through between those two pieces of leather and pull it through. So it makes a finished stitch here on the back, a finished stitch on the front, and then all you do is take your needles off. Again, I could double stitch that and lock that in, but this is going to be plenty strong enough. And then I'm just going to tie a granny knot, and what that's going to do is as I tie that, it's going to pull those together, and it sinks my thread down in between the layers of leather so that it hides it. You don't see it. So I'll do my granny knot. I'll pull that out tight. Take my scissors. Cut the sinew even so you don't even see the sinew. You could take a lighter, since it's waxed, and you could just melt the end of that and push on it with a let's go ahead and do that. Just get a little stylus here. We'll just go ahead. There's my thread right here. Let's just get it hot, push it in with the point of my stylus, and then you can't even tell that there's a knot or any thread there. So what it does is it finishes it off really nice and hides that knot, so you don't end up with a knot on the back or anything. Alright, so it doesn't take much leather. Simple, quick. You can do all kinds of custom stuff like that with beads or claws or alligator teeth or whatever. So get that behind my hand so you can see it here. So it turned out nice. Again, no knots on the back showing. So this is something you could do with scrap leather, small pieces, so you didn't have to buy anything special. If you have some laying around, key rings, you can pick up any hobby store, Walmart, Amazon, different sizes, different diameters. So I appreciate you coming along and watching. Please come back next week, check out the next video, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.